A dense winter fog settled over the Ardennes in December 1944, creating a deceptive calm that concealed the gathering momentum of the German counteroffensive as scattered American units manned thin defensive lines, unaware that a massive armored thrust was preparing to tear through their fragile positions. Across the forested ridges, weary infantrymen rotated through shallow foxholes, struggling against bitter winds that froze weapons and stiffened uniforms, while distant artillery rumbled beneath the clouds, giving early hints of an approaching storm that would soon engulf the quiet sector in unprecedented violence. Allied commanders considered the region relatively secure, relying on assumptions that the Germans lacked the strength for a major attack. Yet intelligence reports hinted at unusual movements across the Rhine. Movements dismissed as logistical withdrawals despite clear signs of concentrated armor masked within dense woodland corridors. Within forward observation posts, young lieutenants scanned the obscured valleys, reporting unusual engine noise beyond the tree line. Noise that vanished into the fog whenever reconnaissance aircraft attempted to locate mechanized formations, hidden beneath expertly camouflaged netting stretched across frozen clearings. The landscape itself contributed to the illusion of safety as rolling hills, narrow trails, and snow-clogged paths appeared unsuitable for large-scale maneuvers, encouraging complacency along American headquarters where planners focused on future operations instead of preparing for immediate danger. In several scattered villages, supply convoys moved with routine confidence, carrying ammunition and rations toward frontline units, unaware that German infiltrators, fluent in English and equipped with captured uniforms, were already observing their routes, preparing to disrupt communications when the offensive began. American intelligence officers continued reviewing intercepted messages, noting increasing radio silence across multiple German divisions, silence interpreted as confusion rather than deliberate operational security, thereby compounding strategic blind spots during the final hours before the assault. Inside regimental command posts, officers warmed their hands near makeshift stoves, discussing imminent rotations and holiday leave schedules, unaware that thousands of German soldiers were silently assembling across a 40-mile front, preparing to launch the largest Western Front offensive since 1940. While engineers repaired bridges and restored damaged roads, they failed to realize how soon those same routes would be contested by advancing armored columns. Columns that would exploit every gap in the overstretched American line once the initial bombardment shattered communication networks. Throughout the sector, isolated units reported strange nighttime activity, including flickering lights deep inside the forest and intermittent vehicle sounds, reports that were filed but not escalated due to expectations that the enemy lacked capacity for coordinated action. As dawn shifted toward another gray morning, the German buildup reached its final stage, with artillery crews positioning thousands of guns behind frozen ridges while infantry formations silently approached their jump-off points, waiting for the signal that would ignite the Ardennes. By the time the first shells tore through the mist, American defenders realized the full scale of the crisis as entire sectors collapsed under overwhelming pressure, forcing commanders to confront a rapidly expanding breach threatening the stability of the Western Front. An urgent summons reached senior Allied commanders as reports from the Ardennes revealed a rapidly worsening situation, forcing Dwight D. Eisenhower to convene an emergency conference that gathered exhausted leaders around a crowded table while distant artillery echoes confirmed the magnitude of the unfolding German offensive. Inside the cold stone room, maps were unrolled across wooden surfaces, revealing jagged penetrations spreading through thin American lines, penetrations that expanded hourly as intelligence officers marked new positions with hastily placed symbols reflecting units, pushed back faster than headquarters could record. Eisenhower entered with measured urgency, carrying updated briefings that described collapsing sectors, severed communications, and isolated garrisons fighting without reinforcement, creating an atmosphere thick with apprehension as senior officers realized the offensive threatened more than a temporary setback. The Supreme Commander listened while staff officers described chaotic conditions near Saint-Vith and Bastogne, conditions shaped by fog, surprise, and overwhelming enemy concentration, leaving several divisions unable to reposition before panzer groups flooded through the forested corridors dominating the central front. Air commanders reported grounded aircraft trapped beneath stubborn weather systems that shielded German movements while denying Allied forces the air superiority they had relied upon for months, thereby complicating any immediate counterattack against rapidly advancing formations. Logistics officers explained the growing strain on supply networks, noting how fuel shortages, congested roads, and panicked retreats disrupted coordinated movement essential for stabilizing defensive lines before German spearheads reached deeper operational objectives. Eisenhower studied every detail with steady concentration, recognizing that the German plan aimed to split Allied armies, seize river crossings, and force a negotiated settlement, a goal achievable if American forces failed to respond immediately with organized strength. Senior commanders debated reinforcement strategies, offering cautious proposals that underestimated the speed of the enemy advance, proposals Eisenhower dismissed due to insufficient urgency as the front continued buckling under sustained pressure. The room fell momentarily silent when casualty estimates were presented, estimates reflecting the rapid destruction of entire battalions overwhelmed during the initial breakthrough, revealing the scale of disaster unfolding across the snow-covered countryside. Eisenhower broke the silence by demanding direct solutions, insisting that hesitation would allow the enemy to consolidate gains that might become irreversible if decisive action did not begin within hours despite worsening operational conditions. Several commanders hesitated to volunteer bold options, knowing that maneuvering large formations during winter storms required extraordinary coordination difficult to achieve while frontline units struggled merely to survive overwhelming firepower. When Eisenhower finally asked how soon a major counterattack could begin, the question carried a weight that filled the room with renewed tension, marking the moment when every leader understood that only unprecedented initiative could rescue the collapsing situation. Patton had reviewed intelligence summaries with relentless discipline, studying rail movements, intercepted signals, and prisoner interrogations that hinted at German preparations, hints other commanders dismissed as improbable given the enemy's depleted reserves, creating a quiet divide between his instincts and the prevailing optimism shaping Allied expectations. His G2 officers compiled detailed assessments showing increased traffic behind German lines, assessments revealing armored concentrations repositioning under cover of forested terrain that concealed the scale of movement from routine aerial reconnaissance limited by worsening winter weather. Patton repeatedly warned that the enemy retained both capability and will to attempt a final offensive, warnings grounded in his belief that desperation could drive bold action designed to exploit perceived Allied complacency during the quiet December lull. He emphasized unusual radio silence across German sectors, silence inconsistent with ordinary defensive posture, prompting him to question whether the Wehrmacht was masking a larger operational effort aimed at a decisive winter strike. During staff conferences, he highlighted the significance of fuel depots shifting eastward, signals pointing toward offensive planning that suggested German commanders hoped to capture Allied supplies rather than rely on their own dwindling stocks. His intelligence teams mapped disappearing divisions that seemed to melt from the front before reappearing in newly fortified positions forming corridors perfectly suited for a concentrated breakthrough along the Ardennes. Patton instructed his corps commanders to quietly develop contingency plans allowing rapid reorientation despite official skepticism that any major German attack could succeed amid Allied superiority, a superiority he believed might encourage dangerous underestimation. He ordered traffic control units to be prepared for sudden route changes, anticipating a moment when Third Army might need to pivot without warning that few outside his staff fully understood in its strategic urgency. Patton even rehearsed alternative attack formations during routine maneuvers, rehearsals disguised as exercises yet deliberately crafted to test his divisions' ability to shift orientation with minimal delay he feared could be catastrophic if German armor achieved early momentum. His officers recalled how he demanded nightly updates on enemy dispositions, updates that revealed a tightening pattern of movement resembling the preliminary stages of a large coordinated push rather than scattered withdrawals. When early reports of the Ardennes breakthrough reached his headquarters, Patton expressed neither surprise nor confusion, reacting instead with a grim acknowledgement that his long-held predictions had finally materialized across the snow-covered battlefield. He informed his staff that the anticipated offensive had begun exactly as his intelligence warned, framing the unfolding crisis not as an unexpected disaster but as a challenge he had already prepared his army to confront decisively. Eisenhower gathered his senior commanders inside the dimly lit Verdun map room, studying arrows depicting German breakthroughs that widened with every delayed response, creating an atmosphere charged with urgency as freezing winds shook the windows against distant rumbling artillery. He emphasized that the situation demanded immediate action, action capable of restoring stability across collapsing sectors. Sectors where American lines bent dangerously under armored assaults, converging towards strategic crossroads, controlling the entire region. Commanders debated possible countermeasures, measures restricted by limited reserves and severe weather. Weather that grounded aircraft and slowed reinforcements struggling along congested winter roads. Eisenhower turned toward Patton with measured seriousness, recognizing that only one army possessed the mobility, cohesion, and readiness to strike with necessary speed. Speed vital for preventing the enemy from isolating additional divisions. His question echoed across the room with unmistakable weight. Weight reflecting both desperation and determination as he asked, "How soon can you attack?" Initiating a silence that seemed to hold every officer's breath in suspended anticipation. Patton stood confidently, projecting certainty despite the immense logistical challenge implied by the question. A challenge requiring complex maneuvering across frozen terrain already strained by operational demands. He replied with stunning clarity, declaring he could pivot his entire Third Army 90 degrees within 48 hours. A declaration that shocked commanders accustomed to slower, methodical repositioning operations. Eisenhower studied him carefully, aware that such a rapid maneuver required flawless coordination dependent on disciplined troops, responsive staff officers, and precise control of thousands of vehicles already spread across extended lines. Patton's staff watched nervously, understanding the magnitude of his commitment. Commitment that demanded immediate rewriting of movement orders, rescheduling of supply convoys, and reassignment of traffic control points across multiple corps. The map room erupted in murmured disbelief. Disbelief rooted not in doubt of Patton's resolve, but in the unprecedented scale of the promised realignment. A realignment unlike anything attempted under such conditions. Eisenhower accepted the declaration with stern approval. Approval underscored by his recognition that aggressive action offered the only viable chance to relieve pressure on besieged defenders, enduring constant artillery barrages near Bastogne. He concluded the meeting by authorizing Patton to proceed, trusting that the bold pledge made within the tense confines of the map room would soon materialize into the decisive counterstroke needed to stabilize the rapidly deteriorating front. Patton's declaration spread through Supreme Headquarters with astonishing speed, creating murmured conversations among officers who struggled to comprehend the scale of the maneuver, a scale unmatched by any previous American operation conducted under winter conditions marked by frozen roads and chaotic communication delays. Staff members studied updated movement charts with widening disbelief, noticing that Patton intended to redirect entire corps across dense terrain jammed with logistical convoys already operating at maximum capacity while navigating treacherous, snow-covered routes. Many questioned whether fuel shortages would hinder such an ambitious undertaking, shortages exacerbated by stalled deliveries caused by surprise enemy attacks along vulnerable supply corridors stretching across the Ardennes region. Patton's senior planners worked tirelessly through the night, drafting revised orders that synchronized thousands of vehicles ranging from tank destroyers to medical trucks, each requiring precise timing to prevent catastrophic traffic bottlenecks. Engineers scrambled to clear icy intersections and repair damaged bridges critical for maintaining momentum during the enormous lateral shift demanded by Patton's plan to reach Bastogne before German armor tightened its encirclement. Radio operators relayed urgent directives across multiple headquarters, directives ensuring every division understood the unprecedented rotation, a rotation that demanded rapid assembly in staging areas cramped with snow and churned mud. Corps commanders adjusted their expectations immediately, recognizing that success depended on maintaining relentless discipline ensuring units departed exactly on schedule despite freezing temperatures reducing visibility and slowing mechanical operations. Intelligence officers expressed cautious optimism, stating that German forces remained focused on their breakthrough, a breakthrough that temporarily left flanks exposed if Patton's maneuver reached vulnerable sectors with sufficient force. Supreme Headquarters analysts debated whether the movement was feasible. Feasible only if weather conditions remained stable long enough to sustain uninterrupted marches across the shifting battlefield environment. Eisenhower received hourly updates from liaison officers, updates confirming that Patton's troops pushed forward with exceptional vigor, a vigor fueled by his insistence that hesitation would forfeit any chance of rescuing the defenders trapped within Bastogne. Some Allied leaders privately acknowledged that only Patton possessed the audacity to promise such speed. speed reflecting his deep understanding of mobility warfare and his ability to transform chaotic circumstances into operational advantage. By the second night, headquarters realized the improbable had become reality. Reality forged by determined soldiers executing a maneuver that reshaped the campaign's direction and validated Patton's bold pledge delivered under immense strategic pressure. Columns of armored vehicles rumbled across the frozen countryside as Patton's Third Army began its extraordinary pivot, a maneuver demanding synchronized precision from thousands of troops who had drilled relentlessly, but never attempted such a dramatic directional shift under brutal midwinter conditions. Convoys stretched for miles, moving through narrow roads carved between snowdrifts that obscured ditches and disabled vehicles, forcing drivers to rely on dim blackout lights while maintaining strict intervals to prevent catastrophic pileups in the icy darkness. Divisional commanders issued rapid-fire adjustments as traffic control points reported unexpected delays. Delays caused by broken-down trucks and freezing engines that challenged mechanics working with numb hands and minimal daylight. Infantry units marched alongside armored columns, their boots crunching over ice while supply officers distributed emergency rations to keep exhausted soldiers moving despite bitter winds. Cutting through heavy winter gear, artillery crews repositioned massive guns with difficulty, struggling to anchor them in frozen soil while coordinating new fire plans that supported the swift realignment of frontline forces converging toward threatened sectors. Engineers toiled around the clock to clear fallen trees and repair frost-damaged bridges. Bridges critical for sustaining the steady flow of tanks and fuel convoys, essential for maintaining operational momentum. Medical units established in temporary aid stations along the routes, anticipating injuries from frostbite, vehicle accidents, and the physical strain endured by troops forced to march or drive without extended rest. Radio operators fought interference from winter storms as they relayed constantly revised timetables. Timetables ensuring subordinate commands could execute the intricate choreography required for such a massive lateral movement. Logistics officers rationed fuel with painstaking precision, calculating consumption rates while guarding against shortages that could stall the rapid pivot before it reached critical defensive positions under threat. Despite exhaustion, morale surged as news spread that the maneuver aimed to relieve Bastogne, a goal that infused soldiers with determination as they imagined comrades holding out against overwhelming German pressure. The army's rapid progression stunned Allied observers who realized the pivot required exceptional discipline from units forced to maintain tempo despite cold-related equipment failures and grueling terrain. By the time frontline elements neared their attack formations, it was clear the Third Army's unprecedented 90-degree turn had transformed an improbable gamble into a decisive strategic shift with far-reaching consequences. December 20, 1944, near Ardennes, Belgium, convoys surged through frozen darkness as engines groaned under relentless strain, carrying ammunition, rations, and fuel toward encircled defenders, while every mile consumed precious hours. Crews pressed forward, knowing stalled movement invited disaster, and each decision carried enormous weight. Snow drifted across winding Ardennes roads, creating treacherous obstacles that forced drivers to navigate carefully, while military police struggled to maintain order among columns stretching endlessly. Every halted truck threatened the entire timetable, placing immense pressure on officers guiding the flow forward. Winter mud clung stubbornly to wheels, slowing progress as supply lines twisted up steep ridges, where exhausted engineers battled icy surfaces. Chains snapped frequently, creating delays that forced commanders to improvise rapidly, ensuring essential cargo reached frontline units without fatal interruption. Machine shops mounted on trailers worked continuously, repairing broken transmissions, while medics moved between vehicles treating frostbite. Despite overwhelming challenges, morale remained steady, because every soldier understood the desperate situation of Bastogne's garrison, whose survival hinged on maintaining uninterrupted movement. Across scattered villages, Belgian civilians watched enormous convoys roar past, realizing the conflict had reached their doorsteps. Their ruined farms stood silent as American formations maneuvered past shattered barns, creating haunting contrasts between military urgency and civilian loss. Artillery shells stockpiled within canvas-covered trucks rattled loudly over potholes, while officers emphasized caution to prevent catastrophic accidents. The winter landscape amplified every vibration, reminding drivers that a single mishap could eliminate irreplaceable firepower needed for forthcoming counterattacks. Fuel tankers traveled under heavy guard because German infiltrators disguised in American uniforms operated nearby, exploiting confusion along congested road networks. Security checkpoints increased drastically, causing delays, yet preventing sabotage that could cripple forward momentum. Bridges became critical choke points, where engineers reinforced weakened structures supporting rapidly moving armored columns. Each crossing demanded precision planning, ensuring heavy vehicles avoided structural collapse, while traffic controllers coordinated continuous flow under harsh wind patterns. Night operations intensified, as darkness allowed faster movement without Luftwaffe interference, though blackouts created extreme navigational difficulties. Drivers relied on faint markers and disciplined spacing, maintaining formation integrity while maneuvering through fog-shrouded valleys. Scouts riding ahead assessed road viability, identifying fallen trees, disabled vehicles, and mines concealed beneath soft snow. Their rapid reports allowed convoys to reroute swiftly, preventing catastrophic gridlocks capable of halting entire divisions. Despite exhaustion, supply crews understood that failure meant Bastogne's isolation would continue, condemning surrounded paratroopers to collapse. Determination strengthened across every unit, fueling relentless effort to deliver essential resources regardless of freezing temperatures. As dawn light filtered through dense clouds, the convoys pressed onward, their progress representing the fragile lifeline sustaining the besieged town. Every successful mile narrowed the gap between advancing formations and trapped defenders, transforming logistical endurance into the decisive factor shaping the unfolding battle. December 22, 1944, near Huffelise, American tanks emerged from dense forests, their tracks tearing through snow, as Patton's spearhead confronted German reconnaissance units probing the flanks. Every encounter tested the Third Army's coordination, and officers quickly relayed orders to prevent fragmented responses from allowing enemy breakthroughs. Artillery barrages roared across frozen ridges, scattering German infantry while machine guns crackled from concealed positions. Communication lines strained under constant use, yet radio operators ensured that forward elements could request immediate support, keeping momentum despite unpredictable weather and terrain challenges that threatened operational cohesion. Armored columns clashed along narrow roads, where a single overturned vehicle could block entire formations. Infantry squads dismounted rapidly, establishing defensive lines while tanks maneuvered for flanking positions, demonstrating the seamless integration of combined arms that Patton had emphasized during the rapid pivot of his Third Army. German panzer crews, initially confident, were slowed by icy terrain, forcing them into exposed positions where American artillery and anti-tank units inflicted heavy casualties. The speed of Patton's counterattack surprised even veteran officers, creating confusion that undermined the cohesion of the German advance. Paratroopers integrated with advancing tanks, securing road junctions and preventing infiltration by German units attempting to disrupt supply lines. Coordination between ground forces and aerial reconnaissance allowed rapid identification of ambushes, minimizing casualties while maintaining relentless pressure on retreating or disoriented enemy formations. Throughout the day, small villages became focal points of intense fighting, with buildings exchanging fire between opposing forces. Engineers moved forward under duress, clearing obstacles and ensuring armored units could continue their advance, while medics treated wounded under constant threat from sporadic artillery fire. German officers attempted counterattacks to regain lost ground, but American artillery and infantry coordination nullified their efforts. Patton's insistence on aggressive maneuvering prevented the Germans from stabilizing defensive lines, forcing continuous retreat that gradually eroded morale among enemy units isolated from higher command. Reinforcements arrived steadily, including Sherman tanks and half-tracks, bolstering forward elements that had faced fierce resistance during initial engagement. Supply trucks navigated treacherous roads to maintain ammunition, fuel, and rations, demonstrating that logistical efficiency was as critical as battlefield skill in sustaining momentum. Weather deteriorated further, with heavy snow reducing visibility and complicating communication. Despite these obstacles, American forces pressed forward, guided by detailed reconnaissance and disciplined leadership that enabled units to maintain formation integrity while executing coordinated attacks across multiple fronts. German forces attempted withdrawal under pressure, leaving behind disabled vehicles and wounded personnel, whose capture provided intelligence on enemy positions and intentions. Forward American commanders quickly exploited these gains, redirecting armored columns to cut off potential escape routes and disrupt any organized counteroffensive. As dusk approached, Patton's units consolidated positions near strategic crossroads, ensuring control over critical terrain. Commanders assessed the damage, redistributed resources, and prepared for renewed attacks, understanding that sustained pressure would determine the success of the broader Ardennes counteroffensive. By nightfall, the first decisive contact demonstrated the effectiveness of rapid maneuver, coordination, and logistical planning. The German advance, once confident and threatening, was slowed and increasingly fragmented, marking the beginning of a turning point in the Battle of the Bulge that showcased Patton's operational genius. December 26, 1944, dawned cold and gray over the Ardennes as Patton's Third Army approached Bastogne, determined to relieve the encircled 101st Airborne Division. Snow-covered roads slowed vehicles, yet disciplined columns advanced with relentless precision, understanding that timing was crucial to prevent the German siege from crushing Allied resistance. Infantry units moved through dense forests and narrow passes, often encountering pockets of German resistance attempting to delay the relief. Coordinated artillery fire supported these advances, suppressing machine gun nests and preventing enemy forces from establishing strongholds that could threaten the fragile supply lines stretching back to the rear. Reconnaissance teams scouted ahead, reporting on blocked roads, frozen bridges, and enemy fortifications. Patton's staff analyzed these reports immediately, adjusting routes and deployment orders, ensuring that armored units would arrive at key intersections in time to support infantry and maintain momentum against increasingly desperate German defenders. By midday, American tanks reached villages on the outskirts of Bastogne, engaging retreating or disoriented German units. Infantry followed closely, clearing buildings and securing roads, while engineers worked under fire to remove obstacles, repair bridges, and restore mobility for advancing supply and armored columns essential for sustaining the relief effort. The first contact with besieged paratroopers brought scenes of exhaustion and hunger, yet morale soared as reinforcements arrived. Medical teams worked swiftly, treating frostbite, injuries, and malnutrition, while combat engineers coordinated with airborne leaders to stabilize defensive positions, preparing the town for the next phase of coordinated counterattacks. German forces attempted sporadic counterattacks to prevent consolidation within Bastogne, yet concentrated artillery, well-coordinated infantry, and armored support thwarted each effort. Patton's insistence on rapid and aggressive action ensured that no opportunity was given to the enemy to regain initiative or reorganize trapped divisions. Weather remained a challenge, with heavy snow reducing visibility, complicating aerial reconnaissance, and slowing mechanized movement. Nevertheless, supply convoys navigated treacherous terrain, delivering fuel, ammunition, and food to frontline units, enabling sustained operations and allowing the Third Army to maintain pressure while securing liberated positions around Bastogne. Strategic crossroads were quickly secured, enabling American forces to cut off German escape routes and prevent reinforcements from reaching isolated units. Commanders coordinated movements across multiple sectors, ensuring overlapping fields of fire, mutual support, and uninterrupted momentum that threatened the cohesion of German forces across the northern Bulge. As Bastogne was fully relieved, the psychological impact on both Allied and German forces became evident. American troops gained confidence, while German units displayed disorganization and declining morale, recognizing that the Allies had regained operational initiative and were capable of turning the momentum of the Battle of the Bulge decisively. Follow-up attacks pressed north and west, exploiting breaches in German lines created by the relief effort. Combined arms coordination, rapid maneuvering, and superior logistics allowed Third Army units to expand the corridor, restore communication with encircled divisions, and prepare for a sustained push that would reclaim lost territory from the enemy. Intelligence gathered during the relief revealed weakened German supply lines, depleted reserves, and command disarray. Patton and his staff immediately adjusted operational plans, ensuring that follow-up advances would capitalize on enemy vulnerabilities while maintaining flexibility to respond to unforeseen counterattacks or logistical challenges in harsh winter conditions. By nightfall, the road to Bastogne was open, signaling a pivotal shift in the Ardennes campaign. The relief demonstrated the effectiveness of rapid maneuver, disciplined logistics, and decisive leadership, turning the tide of the Battle of the Bulge and marking a moment when Allied forces regained strategic momentum against the faltering German offensive. In the aftermath of the Ardennes offensive, General Dwight D. Eisenhower reflected on the extraordinary series of decisions that preserved the Allied line. The Battle of the Bulge had tested every aspect of command, from logistics and intelligence to coordination among infantry, armor, and air support under extreme winter conditions. Eisenhower marveled at General Patton's ability to pivot the Third Army 90 degrees in 48 hours, recognizing that such rapid operational flexibility required not only planning but immense confidence in subordinate commanders and their ability to execute complex maneuvers without delay or confusion. He considered the courage displayed by frontline units, who advanced over icy roads and through snowdrifts while facing entrenched enemy forces, understanding that battlefield initiative and morale could prove decisive when conventional strategy alone might have failed under overwhelming pressure. The relief of Bastogne, in Eisenhower's view, symbolized the synergy of leadership and preparedness. Coordinated artillery, precise armored movements, and effective infantry tactics exemplified the kind of combined arms warfare that became a model for Allied operations throughout the remainder of the European campaign. Eisenhower also reflected on the critical importance of intelligence, which allowed Patton to anticipate German positions and weaknesses. Timely reconnaissance, coupled with rapid communication among staff officers, ensured that operational decisions were informed and adaptable, minimizing the risk of missteps in an unpredictable and fluid battlefield environment. The Supreme Commander acknowledged that risk-taking at the highest level had been necessary, yet contingent upon the discipline and initiative of subordinate commanders who could execute complex maneuvers with speed and precision, demonstrating the value of trust and delegated authority within the Allied command structure. Eisenhower recognized that logistics were the backbone of success during the Ardennes. Fuel, ammunition, and supply lines had to be coordinated meticulously across snowbound terrain, and the ability to maintain momentum despite these constraints distinguished successful maneuvers from potential disaster in a campaign marked by winter chaos. He noted that leadership extended beyond strategy into morale, as soldiers and officers alike drew inspiration from decisive actions that turned desperation into hope. Bastogne's relief offered tangible proof that the Allies could respond with speed and determination, shaping both military outcomes and public confidence. Eisenhower also reflected on the broader implications of Patton's maneuver, understanding that such operational flexibility could be replicated across multiple theaters. The Ardennes success became a blueprint for future campaigns, emphasizing the integration of rapid decision-making, mobility, and combined arms coordination to achieve strategic objectives efficiently. He considered the role of timing in the Ardennes, noting how each decision had a narrow window of opportunity. Patton's precise calculations of distance, movement, and enemy disposition illustrated the critical balance between audacity and the calculated judgment necessary for high-command operations. Eisenhower recognized the lasting lessons of the maneuver, that bold leadership, meticulous preparation, and the willingness to take controlled risks could decisively influence the course of war. The Ardennes operation underscored the interplay of strategy, logistics, and morale as essential elements of successful military campaigns. Ultimately, Eisenhower's reflection on the Ardennes affirmed that leadership under pressure could shape history. The rapid pivot of the Third Army, the relief of Bastogne, and the ensuing counteroffensives demonstrated how decisive action, informed by intelligence and executed with courage, altered the trajectory of World War II in Europe permanently.